Hey man, this is Peter Anthony. I am super excited. Welcome to Bold and Brash. Of course, I am here with one of my favorite entrepreneurs, a good friend of mine, a brother in arms in our faith, and we're just going to rock it out. If you've been looking for something new, if you've been trying to figure out how do you reinvent yourself, how do you find the next big thing, Randy Lang is about to blow your socks off. The things he's done, the things he's doing, and the things he's got in store, he is going to give you a great overview of your potential and what's possible in 2025. But first, I need you to do something really important. I need you to hit like, hit subscribe, leave a terrible comment about how bad we are, how you don't like my hair, how you don't like my things, how you don't want to be on this channel. Just leave us and tell all your friends to leave terrible comments too. It helps the algorithm and it makes me laugh, and I will absolutely get back to you. And we will get better because of it. Randy Lang, how are you, my friends? It's good to have you, brother. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're busy. Bro, your story is crazy. Your book is amazing. Tell people a little about yourself.
Yeah, I would say there's nothing unique or special about me. I think that, when somebody has a faith in God and a belief in themselves, I think that comes through with what you view your divine potential, so to speak.
Sure.
And, I came from, lower middle class family. My parents were always super supportive. I was fortunate enough to be able to spend my summers at a dairy farm, so I certainly know what hard work is. And, my dad was a CPA, and, at the dinner table, he'd always say that sales was the highest paid profession. So that sounded pretty good to me. So school wasn't really something that I'm a lifelong learner. I love learning. I'm just not sold on secondary education unless it's for specific research. Sure. Right. But delivering papers as a kid, just always involved in some type of sales, whether it was selling painted rocks around the neighborhood when I'm 6 years old. And,
I love that.
Served a 2-year mission in Brazil, and to a degree, that's sales, I would say.
Oh, the best sales ever. Right. Hey, but we live in Utah, man. Yeah. Like missionaries, return missionaries, they're blowing it up for this state. We have the best sales force in history because it's from the heart.
Yeah.
Once you learn to love from the heart and you're genuinely curious about people, it's incredible. I know when you came in to our outside office, and we have all the pictures on the wall, and I have a picture of you and a mutual friend of ours, Jeffrey Flan. Everything probably runs through faith.
Yeah.
So if you have faith if you have a higher level of faith, and then you understand that there's a higher level of unconditional love that moves towards you, then you learn how to love yourself, and then you learn how to love others. It's easier to go the distance because the journey we're asked to endure, right? Everybody's asked to endure. Once they come to Christ, that journey is endure to the end. That's the last of the 5 things. You have to endure to the end, right? Which is a long time. Man, I love business because my exit strategy is 5 to 7 years. Right? So I get to re-up my creativity every 5 to 7 years. So I think that there's some wisdom in understanding that you do get to redeem yourself when you make a bad business mistake, and then go out and endure the next one to the end. Make the decision, have the faith, have the confidence, and walk through it. Tell us about a couple of your businesses, because they're so interesting and so diverse. From where you are right now, you're on the precipice of a future exit within the next probably 2 years, I would say, but definitely 2 to 3. A big exit. You're in another holding campaign with another one of your multi-million-dollar businesses with lots of locations. But you did something else first, start to acquire those, and that was a sales team.
Yeah.
And I think if I remember the stories correctly from you sharing and your book, what's the title of your book?
Believe It.
Believe It. I love it. I actually put that on shirts before I met you.
That's cool.
I love that. But tell us the sales portion.
Yeah.
Because that really set the stage financially for you to make some of the next investments that set the next stage and the next part of the
Yeah, for sure. I would say too, I'm a huge wrestling fan. I started wrestling when I was a freshman in high school. And when I returned from my mission, my wrestling coach was in Amway. And so, of course, I'm going to join Amway and, become a millionaire in Amway. And I think the largest check I ever received from that was like $9 and some change. But what I learned through Amway was invaluable, right?
Oh, no, they're valuable. They're the best.
Yeah, they really taught about, reading books and listening to tapes and really having mentors and people in your life. And as a kid, my parents had signed up with Amway because of somebody in a church group. And, so Zig Ziglar always stood out to me. So before my wrestling matches, I would be listening to Zig Ziglar rather than smart rock, AC/DC or something. And, so I'm a huge fan of Zig Ziglar. That's the reason I wrote the book, because he said that everybody should write a book, right? So when I'm making my goals at 21, everything I wanted to do, be, or have, that was within the list. And, so I get off my mission and start selling cell phones. This is back when they had the big brick phones and the car phones, and eventually to these the Motorola flip phones and all that, and quickly rose to be number one in the sales with that. And then I had a buddy that was selling these 25-cent candy machines, and I was like, well, that's pretty interesting. But again, I have to be a product of the product. Zipper said you can't sell Chevys and drive a Toyota, right? You've got to be authentic. It's got to be true to you. And so for me, I was like, okay, well, let me buy some. So my wife and I got 30 machines and placed them in little St. George, Utah. And we'd get the coins each month, at about $600 a month. We'd go down to Mesquite because they had casinos down there. And instead of rolling up the quarters, we would just dump them in the thing. And, I would say, again, that was kind of the foundation of actually owning a business rather than being an employee or self-employed as a tenant.
And it's a great business model. My first understanding of choosing the right model versus choosing passion over intellect. Do you like cars a little bit? A little,
much more than I do.
Yeah, but there was a car called this Corvette Z06. It came out about 1991. And I remember there was this big waiting list for this car, and we're sitting outside and just opened one of my salons. And I was in my mid-20s, and I was a Tony Robbins. So I met Zig, but I met Zig through Tony. And then I met Kiyosaki, who's that story is they found the book at a garage sale in Amway and then pushed it through Amway. And then Keith Cunningham, who created the cash flow quadrant, became a good friend of mine for the last 25 years. He's amazing. But what was interesting is I see this cat pull up in a black Z06 that's just, you couldn't get the car. So we're sitting at this outside dining room, watch this guy come out of the car, and I'm thinking who's getting out of this car? It's got to be a movie star. This is the coolest American car ever made. And out of the car gets a guy who's probably in a little worse shape than I am now, with tighter jeans, a little bigger belly, right? And he's got a t-shirt with sort of no sleeves cut off, right? And I'm like, and he pulls out of his pocket, he walks to the back of the car, pops the glass, pulls out two big, toolboxes. One is completely hammered, and the other one's a little fresher. And then he walks around the sidewalk. Now I'm maybe, 50 feet from him, because we're eating on the outdoor deck. He walks into the restaurant, which is a pretty nice restaurant. I'm like, what's it? Oh, but I've got a great vantage point, so I could see the front door. And he puts the two boxes down, and he walks over to the gumball machines, and there's 3 on the top, 3 on the bottom, 25-cent machine. He pulls out. At first, I didn't know what he was doing. He opens one of the toolboxes, and he's got rings of keys. and he's looking through the ring, flipping through it, right? You know, because you didn't. And then the other one, he's got bags, and he would just drop the bags. So it was the craziest thing. He unloads all this coin, walks into the back kitchen, gets a big bag and a little bag, leaves the little bag on the bar, takes the big bag with him. And I'm thinking to myself, how much money did this cat just make? And then I said, if each machine makes $5 a week and it makes $20 a month, that's 120. And he's got 100 machines. At the time, 150,000 a year is pretty good. So, and he might only have 100 stops.
Yeah.
But I could see from his many keychains, I estimated that he probably had about 300 or 400 locations.
Yeah.
And I realized two things. One is, I was frustrated. Bro, it's frustrating, right? Because here I am, you know, and you could get into the second part of your story, but building a salon costs a lot of money. Cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars in 1989. It takes years, and your percentage of failure is probably 99% of them fail within the first 5 to 10 years. Right. So I'm like risking everything. I'm passionate about all my stuff. I've done all the Zig stuff, the Brian Tracy stuff. Like I'm out there and I'm like, and I still don't have a Z06. And I realize there's two things that are important in life. One is to love what you do, but one is to love that you get to do so that you can get to love. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what you do. You can be a millionaire doing anything. And most millionaires don't do things that are sexy. Nobody wakes up and says, oh man, if I could make that tabletop a little faster, a little cheaper, with a little higher quality, life would be great. But they don't say, I want to be the best flat box person in the world.
Yeah.
And we have a gentleman who I sort of know, who goes to church with me, who's like a multi-billionaire because he was the best flat top boxer in the world for furniture.
Yeah.
There's so many things you can do, but nobody wakes up and says, that's it. They say, that's it. I love cars. That's it. I love watches. That's it. I want to love to design. You went out and started a sales team and completely crushed it. What was the next level? Because you didn't wake up and say, if I could only sell cell phones, life would be great.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, you know, as you kind of look back at it, I think that, again, from my perspective, that the cream rises to the top in whatever industry you fall into. And that was kind of just the direction it went, right? You know, call it God or whatever you might have it be. But yeah, from my perspective, you know, maybe I would have got introduced to loans or maybe into real estate. And, you know, over 20 plus years, you know, you're now you have a mortgage company or several mortgage companies. Now maybe you have, you know, a real estate development company. I mean, so again, it's interesting as you look back at that, but that kind of led me to saying, okay, when I had those vending machines, maybe the biggest benefit to me was the tax benefits from that, right? Well, how do you do that? Again, my dad being a CPA was like, well, you have to have the proper entity structure, right? You need to have a CPA that understands the write-offs from a small business. So I set up a company called Strategic Financial, and we help new business owners get LLC, you know, entities set up and their personal business tax returns.
So you took what you needed to be successful and then repurposed it to sell it to all your friends so they could be successful too.
Yeah, you know, and we sell
Snooky gangster stuff, man.
You know, what do they say? There's got to be some Disney movie, something that says, find a need, fill a need. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe that's a Pixar one. I don't know what it was. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of, you know, through that. And, you know, I think what you're referring to is kind of at this time back in 2004, 2005, one of the guys that was working for us, he said, hey, I've got a good friend coming into town. You know, you guys got to have lunch. So we go to lunch and he's like, oh, we're heading up to Idaho. I was like, what are you doing in Idaho? That's where, so, you know, you were curious. I was like, that's my roots, right? I mean, again, as a kid, going to be able to work around with your grandpa, who you just put on this pedestal as the greatest human on life, right? And, you know, being able to get up at 3:30s and milk the cows with them and getting the opportunity to clean the barn. I know that sounds weird, but I actually love to spray down and get the manure all in the grate, make it look nice and clean, and took pride in that as, 12 to 17 and every summer. But so he's like, oh, we're heading up to Rexburg, Idaho, and we're going to open up a Paul Mitchell hair school. And I was like, St. George needs one of those. What do we do? So, one thing led to another where, we funded it, and then he and his wife ran the school. And I think what happened with that is, first my wife tells the story. She was like, you're crazy. What are you doing? There's too much going on. Right. And so she went to a 5-day training and absolutely fell in love with Paul Mitchell, fell in love with all things Paul Mitchell. And, for her, it was a great experience because I think growing up in Utah as a woman, it's like you're trained, taught, and educated to be a good mom.
Yes.
Right. It's not so much about having an occupation.
Growing up in New York, it's my semi frustration for my daughters because they have multiple paths. So I love that your wife is a gangster, by the way. She crushes those schools, and now your daughter's in it, right? Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's how you sold your sales company for the phones.
I was still doing that, and then I sold that in 2005, right as we were opening our first Paul Mitchell school. Started a new company, which moved us to California. Built that one up, sold it, moved back here to Draper in 2010, built another company to $25 million a year, and then started another company where we were doing funding for new business owners, and then exited that in 2018. And, at that point thought I was done, and it was there. Okay. We've got our schools, at that point now we have
schools. Yeah. It's multiple. So you don't own one Paul Mitchell school, you own 6 of them.
Yeah.
Right. You haven't had one exit. You've had like 4 or 5 already.
No.
Which is like, and you're a young man. How old are you?
Just turned 50.
Oh, you did?
Just turned 50.
Wow, that's a milestone. I just turned 60.
No.
So you've done so much for someone so young. And here's what I love is you're still doing. So when we met, a few years ago, we kept talking. It's interesting because of my hair background, and we have some mutual friends like Kelly Cardenas. So he's just great, right? A big Paul Mitchell guy. And I thought to myself, man, I watched the companies I was with never opened schools. There wasn't a Wella school. There wasn't a Veda, sort of was thinking about it. They didn't really open schools as a franchise until Estee Lauder took them over. And then they started to really think, oh, this school might be pretty good to get our soap out, right? And but I never had an opportunity to jump into the school business, which I think is way better than the salon business. Mm-hmm. I'd rather sell picks and shovels than mine for gold.
Yeah.
Right. But I love what you did. And then we were talking, and I remember, I was in a transition, like, what am I going to do? I exited from a couple of companies, and I'm like, not at the same level, at anywhere near the level you exited. But I was like, oh man, what am I going to do? And I asked you, well, what are you going to do? And you're like, I think I might do something in insurance. It just sounds like I should do something there. And this is why you're actually an entrepreneur. Because you look at the opportunity and you're not married to the journey.
Yeah.
You're married to, you're not married to the product. You're committed to the journey, and you fall in love with the opportunity.
Yeah.
Which is super cool, right? So I'm going to say it one more time. You're not committed to you're not falling in love with the product. You fall in love with you commit to the journey and fall in love with the destination. And you find products that you respect, that you think that can make a difference. And you said insurance, and then you told me some big number, like, oh man, I want to have like, I don't know, 300 agents or 500 agents. And I'm like, do you know how hard it is to get 500 agents, right? And how hard it is to break into the insurance? This is only 2.5 years ago. How many agents do you guys have now?
We have over 400 agents, and we're currently onboarding another 500 this year.
That's incredible, man. and you're crushing that industry. And I got to be lucky enough. You brought me into the boardroom, and you and your partners kind of broke it down. But you looked at it completely different. You looked at insurance instead of as a traditional agency. You looked at it as a marketing company. And you said, if we can get the marketing down, there's a big play here.
Yeah.
Versus if we can be part of the, like, you didn't really care if you were part of the insurance agents elite. That wasn't your jam. Your jam was a much bigger picture. And I always thought that was crazy cool. So tell us about that journey.
So where that comes from is in 2020, when the whole world shut down, 2 years past, what I thought was retirement. And I'm sitting there, and I didn't like the way it made me feel. Right. It was like, we've got investments, real estate, we've got the schools, and it's like, man, this is interesting. So, people talk to God the way they do, but, I remember I was in my basement and I was like, what do you want me to do? And it was an audible voice that was insurance. And I was like, almost looking around, it was a surreal moment. And I'm a fan of insurance. I've had a whole life policy since 1999.
Wow.
And that's how we actually funded our first Paul Mitchell school, was the cash value in the life insurance policy. So I really am a student of how to be your own banker, the lifetime economic acceleration process, correctly, rather than being oversold a policy only to have it default, which happens a lot of times with a whole life policy. And so I just kind of went through that journey and was able to partner with some really good people. I was telling my kids the other day, as I've got 3 girls, and 25, 22, and 15. And so much in life, it's about relationships. Mm. It's not, it is funny. People say it's not what you know, it is who you know. And it's true. But how you get to know them is if every day you look to add more value than you receive. And that mindset leads you to these opportunities and to people and relationships. And the partners that I have today, they're next level, right? And so, but going back to specifically on marketing, every business that I've owned, that initial funnel, and you know this better than anybody else, is leads.
It's leads, then it's lead conversion.
Yeah.
And that's our company's likes to leads. How do you create that interest? When you solve that problem, it doesn't matter the product.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I loved that you really looked at it in a new way. And it's like, okay, the end result of the acquisition of a product was relevant, but not necessary, because if you can't get enough interest and acquire that interest at a level that's duplicatable and economical, then there's not going to be enough momentum to keep people in the game. Yeah. This is why insurance agents, when they become agents and try to sell insurance, this is why most of them fail. Because they don't know how to generate leads. They're just, my background with my stepfather was insurance, and I remember when I started to manage his agency a little bit, the training was, okay, cool. The original training was, here's a book, here's a pen, here's a piece of paper, write down 100 names and numbers of friends, family, and fools, because that's your original warm list. Now, I think there's a lot of credibility to that, in the sense of that's your resources. And, that's a very Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar kind of training, right, from the late 70s, early 80s. But when we're looking at it today, you've had such an opportunity to look at this whole ideal with a modern twist. I loved it. And when we came in and saw the presentation of your company, I was blown away. Like, I was really excited. I was with my director, Megan, and she was really excited. And she owns an insurance agency, right? It's selling what you sell. And she's like, you can get leads for how much? Right? Your people are converting a person a day. So that brag on that a little bit. because not how much you're acquiring the leads flow, but how well your agents are doing, which is allowing you to more than grow at the rate of over 120% this year.
Yeah,
We're just your agents, at your financial.
I think a lot of it is, from my perspective in the business, if your salespeople, in this case agents, if they're happy, everybody's happy. Right.
So you look at it as a cultural thing.
It's a very, very much a cultural thing. And then it's like, you can tell them how much you care about them, but a lot of that is also in their paycheck. So, we're a little unconventional where we pay higher commissions than anybody else. Right. And so because of that, we are able to attract a high level of talent. And then, like Anthony Robbins says, we have high standards, not just expectations, but we have those high standards, and we have our, KPIs that, hey, we brought you on to be one of the best. Now deliver, and it's working pretty well.
So, how many people are they closing on average a day?
Yeah, it's about 400 a year per agent is the average number. Yeah, because you've got the busy season and annual enrollment period.
They're closing more than one person a day, including Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah.
Now, compare that to, and you must know the stats, and you can fudge a little bit on them if you don't know them exactly, but that can't be the average. I know a lot of agents who aren't closing 400 new clients a year.
No, that is the average.
No. Yeah, no, that's the average for other people.
Oh, no.
You're outperforming the industry by 3 to 1.
Yeah, there's some public companies like GoHealth, DHealth, SelectQuote, and I would say they're probably in that same ballpark. As an average, I would say that's probably pretty accurate. The difference is we're just paying the agents more. So it's not that we're just making less on that than a GoHealth or SelectQuote or eHealth, outside of the fact that we're doing our own marketing. And so our cost per acquisition is significantly lower than theirs.
So your cost per acquisition, I think you're actually outperforming, because I know their numbers.
Yeah.
They're not closing 400 customers per agent.
Okay.
They're not. But they do well. But the average agent that will walk into the Main Street USA is never closing 400 people a year.
No, they're probably 40, 50 a year.
Yeah, max, because it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to get a lead and then convert a lead, and it's hard. It's just hard. You guys have figured it out. You've got the secret sauce, and you're crushing it. And that's put you in a new position where you're 50, you're going to be 52, and you're going to be on another exit. You're going to be unemployed again, and you're completely unemployable. So what do you see? What are the opportunities for young people right now that want to get out there? Not young people, my demographic. My demographic is, we work with people and we bring them into our affiliate model programs from about 37, 38, all the way to mid-50s. And that internal is our power band. That early 40s to late 40s person who's going to make a change. It's like, man, I've had this job. I'm not where I want to be. I want to start making more money. I want to start with a little side hustle money, and I want to start to learn this digital thing. So we've isolated that. What do you think are some of the emerging markets where there's opportunities for growth, whether it be and it's all going to be sales oriented, because you got to sell something. So, but what do you think? What do you think, Im?
For your listeners or for me?
First for our listeners, and then for you. Where do you see yourself? But first, where should we be looking?
So I always go back and I look at it. It really doesn't matter what I think. It matters like what they think, and to be specific, what they want. And so again, it's kind of outlining and deciding and clearly defining what it is you want, why you want it, and then making a list of who are the people, places, and things to help you achieve those things. And is that a goal? Is it a wish list? So to me, it's everybody's different in that. But when we're specifically talking about entrepreneurs, I think there's just so many things, and it really is, to me, again, how I've made the decision on to do things. It's been more of a gut. Like with Paul Mitchell, it wasn't like I went out there and sought that out, and with insurance, it really was, for me, divine. It was all God. And so,
yes, church.
I think everybody has their unique ways of doing that. And, now with ChatGPT, you can figure out whatever business you want to do and say, list the top 20 things that'll impede me or stop me from doing this, or the challenges, and be just fully aware of what those are, and identifying what your strengths are and your weaknesses, and find those things that fit for you. But entrepreneurs are my people, right? They're our people, right? It's like there are not many people in that, because it's feast or famine, right? And when we were up in Park City, I was in the stage where it was like chewing glass, and I'm stealing that from Elon Musk, but he said, what do entrepreneurs have in common? He goes, well, first, it's very exciting. Then for about 2.5 years, it's like chewing glass.
It's the worst.
Then it gets fun.
Then it gets fun. I mean, I'm still chewing glass. I mean, I'm about 18 months out of chewing glass. But you stick. The cool thing about being an entrepreneur is there's nothing like the highs.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like, for me, I've supplied hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs over the last few decades. And I've helped people do everything from send kids to college, to buy homes, to learning how to buy their own businesses. And that tutelage has been really cool. And I think that's more rewarding than the money or lack of money in moments. I think that's been the coolest thing, is, because in our faith, it's, you're a child of God, right? We call him our Father, right? In most Christian faiths. And you're in that, like, okay, cool. If he's our Father, if he's your father or my father, that means we're brothers and sisters, right? So if we're brothers and sisters, then the cool thing is, how does my father want me to take care of his children? And that was an epiphany for me. So I'm super blessed that I've gotten to take care of any of his children in any way possible. Whatever I can do to please my father, I will do. And then on top of that, I look and I say, I grew up poor. I grew up on welfare. I lived in, even though I was born in New York City, we moved immediately back to Peru, and we had no money. I literally remember it was very hard to eat. When we came back here, we were on welfare, no help. And I thought to myself, man, I don't want to be poor.
Yeah.
And I don't want to suffer or struggle when it comes to necessities. And and thank God I've been blessed so much that I haven't really had to struggle. I was successful like yourself in my mid-20s, and I've maintained components of that success through, and I've never had to have a job. I never had to go have a boss. I mean, my clients are my boss, but
yeah,
you understand what I mean. It's like, I can always fire a client, They can always fire me too, but they don't, so I feel really good about that. Give us one piece of advice. Like, what's the starting place? You said, to kind of figure out, what do you really want and why do you want it? I think for me, like we've had other people on today, I think for me, that's the cleanest one. It's like, what do you want?
Yeah.
And why do you want that? I've had so many kids, like, they say, oh man, I want a Ferrari. I'm like, that's awesome. If I give you a Ferrari right now, what are you going to do with it? He's like, oh man, I drive it. And I was like, okay, cool. It's $25,000 for a brake job, and they only want every 5,000 miles.
Yeah.
Right? Do you have the 25,000? Because if you're going to drive it in 3 months, you're going to need brakes.
Yeah.
It's about $7,000 or $8,000 to insure it. The tires are about $5,000 or $6,000, and they need to be rotated every 5,000 or 6,000 miles with the brakes. So, you're looking at a little bit more, Well, why doesn't anybody talk about that? Because most people don't drive their Ferraris. Right? They go about 100 miles a month. They take them out. We go to Coins and Coffee or Coins and Cars or whatever it's called. We show it off. Yes, I own a Ferrari, come back to my house and it's in a big warehouse. And we're all, we're sipping tea looking at our Ferraris, but we're not driving our Ferraris. People want things for the reasons they don't understand.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
100%.
So the things that they asked for, and they don't actually have the capacity very often to manage, maintain, or grow. So I see so many young people, and let's take the salon industry as a standard, because you have schools and all those people, the first thing when I used to teach at the schools, I'd say, oh, so what do you want to be? Oh, you own a salon? Right? I'm thinking to myself, you don't even understand. And, from 89 to 90, we did $1 million in our salon in our first 18 months, which is like, for those, that's like doing 3 million. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. And most of it was soap, We sold shampoo. And people couldn't believe that I'd sell like a lot of shampoo, like thousands a day of shampoo. But what was interesting is everybody thinks they can do it until you hand them the keys. Everybody thinks they're a race car driver until they get on the track.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks they're going to be a great business owner until the first week you can't meet payroll. And then you see everybody thinks they can captain the ship when the sun is shining, the seas are calm, and the wind is at your back. It's hard. You've captained your multiple ships. And that's where I think, that quote by Elon, it's like chewing on glass.
Yeah.
It's painful.
Yeah.
What's the one story that you have? Like, I remember my payroll was right around 70 a week. And we opened, and it took us about a year to build a location, right? We had to gut a building and build it out and make the transition. It was a little under 8,000 square feet. And I was just like, oh, this is so painful. It took us like 9 or 10 months. It felt like decades. Yeah. And he flooded the week we were open.
Oh my gosh.
And my payroll that week was like $70-something thousand. It was painful for me, because I put $1 million into the location, cash. I didn't, because I always heard the best investment you can make is in yourself. Well, the best investment you can make is with other people's money. Right? That's the best. But that's something you don't learn because you take the gurus at their word.
Yeah.
Did you ever hit that point where you had more month or less month left and really not enough money to get to the end?
Yeah, I think that, I'm just so conservative that I didn't have that, but I think a lot of people, they may look at myself or my wife and, oh my gosh, all the success, and, really they don't talk about the failures, right? And so I had an educational experience, I'll call it, right? Because it's either a failure
or an educational.
So to me, it's an educational experience. So when we lived in Calabasas, they had a Susie Cakes. They had these red velvet cupcakes, amongst other things, but that was all that mattered to me.
Yeah, I love red velvet.
And then Sweet Orleans. And so when we moved here in Draper, Sweet Orleans started to franchise, right? Well, I always loved the franchise model to begin with, but I did not follow the advice of Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, where, he tells the story about, I wanted to open a bakery, so I went and worked in a bakery first to make sure I was going to like it. He decided he didn't, so then he started exercise equipment and then became multi-millionaire.
That's a Chick-fil-A model. If you're going to buy one of our franchises, you're going to work in it for a year. It's every single job.
It just makes sense. So I buy the rights for all of Utah because in my mind, I'm going to be Sweet Orleans, these red velvet, they're unbelievable, right? Still there in Southern California. To me, that it's heaven on earth, right? That red velvet cupcakes. And
we like bunt.
Nothing but cake.
Nothing but.
Yeah. I tested all of those, but this Susie Cakes and Sweet Orleans, to me, she won 3 times on Cupcake Wars. And anyway, so I was like, this is going to be the Cafe Rio of cupcakes. And us LDS people, we're not having alcohol, so we're going to want our sugar fix, right? We'll have lines out the door. And, that was about a $500,000 educational experience, closed it down 11 months later, and so, again, if I can go back in time, it's like, well, before I'm going to make a decision to put the chips in on that, a few things about franchises, wait till there's 100. Now, wait till there's that proof of concept to say, now I'm going to join that franchise or start whatever that is you're going to do that first. Make sure that you understand all of the upside and the downside before you jump in on that. But, specifically for the listeners, I would say, are they starting with nothing, or do they already have a lump sum of money? Because if you really don't have money, you'd be an Uber driver, Instacart, insurance, for the right people and places. If you have real estate, if you have a bunch of money already, now you have more options, right? And so you want to join to a franchise, you want to just be an investor with Reef Capital, with the Black Desert, or the Tiger Woods property up in Park City. So, you just have more options if you're in that realm. But it's, again, I really tried to define that in my book, because I didn't want to be one of those other things that was like, you read this, you get all excited, and it's like, what do I do with my hands? Mm-hmm. Right? So I take them through a workbook that helps people clearly define their goals, clearly define what it is they want, why they want it, right? Because that's a lot of the piece people can't do. Most people, as you know, that work for you, they have no clue what they want.
No clue. Well, I think they have a clue what they want, but they don't know why they want it. I would say knowing the why you want it is bigger than knowing what you want.
Yeah.
Why would I want that? And as soon as I know why, I can define, is that really what I want?
Yeah.
As soon as I understand, it's like, okay, cool. Like, why did I want to own a salon? It was because I thought being an entrepreneur was cool. It was low barrier to entry. I could go in and I could learn the craft and then go open with my own group of business. I could transfer a group of business. There weren't a lot of jobs where I could transfer a group of business. So when I started bringing in $200,000-$300,000 behind my chair, it was easy to transfer. So I went from, let's say, I was doing about between 5,000 and 7,000 a week in my own chair. So I transferred that money to my own business.
Yep.
So we hit $1 million as a salon, but not for nothing. At that point, I think maybe 590 of it, or probably 500 of that came from my own service in 18 months. And then 300 of that came from my sales of product, because I sold product for the whole salon. I sold them in 5-packs. So I put a shampoo, a conditioner, a spray, a gel, and like a clarifier, all in a 5-pack. And I sold a 5-pack for $40, and it's the only thing you could buy. So everybody, we'd see 30 to 50 people a day in the beginning, not a lot, but everybody got a 5-pack. When you amortize that out over 6 days, you're selling $45 worth of product, you're selling it to 30 people, you're close to the $1,800 a day mark. You multiply that by even 5 days a week, you're at $9,000 a week. So you've got over that span of time, hundreds of thousands of dollars of just shampoo.
Yeah.
And then you combine that with, okay, I want to be a perm specialist, right? And it was $250 for a perm. So I'm like, and plus then I do a haircut for another $100. So I was like, I was doing 10 perms a day. That's like perming everybody. You need a perm. It was great. And so for me, I wanted the car. I wanted the Porsche. And the day I had the money for the Porsche, I looked at the Porsche. I looked at the $40,000 I had in my hand in 1988, almost 89, right around 89. And I looked at the Porsche. I looked at my money. I looked at the Porsche. I looked at my money, and I walked out of the Porsche deal. Yeah. And I took that money and I put it on the salon.
Yeah.
And what I wanted was the opportunity to buy a Porsche, but I didn't want a 944. I wanted a 911 C4. That's what I wanted. But that was like $70,000 at the time, and I only had 40 something. So like, how can I turn this 40 something into that? And then what would I do with that? And then there was like, okay, cool. Here's a lifestyle I want. I want to have a house in the Hamptons. I want to be able to go and download and live. And I want to travel, and I wanted to take my team every place. I was meticulous about journaling out everything that I wanted and why I wanted it. And I think you are as well, but you're a little bit smarter because you started out way more disciplined, where I didn't grow up in the LDS faith. So sex, drugs, and rock and roll was a huge part of my life for the first 40 years, or at least 35 of them, and that was great, but a distraction.
Yeah.
Because I didn't settle in. So I would give, if you're in a great marriage and you know why you want it and it suits everybody, then I think then you have that great stability in your relationship, you're going to crush.
Yeah.
I think if you're not in a great stability of your relationship, you're going to not crush. So, brother, thank you so much. I love you. We got to do this again. I want to teach Believe It. I'm going to have you speak at our next conference. This is Bold Brash, Randy Lang. The book is called Believe It. Links in the description. We love you. Do something. Get started.